Hey there everybody, this is Jaytech welcoming you to the first of a series of educational videos I'm doing for Sonic Academy. The reason that I'm doing these videos for you guys is that I believe a lot of producers are not necessarily achieving their own gold standard for the tracks that they're doing, and I think that can be a real shame, and not seeing a project through to its fullest potential is often not only a waste of your time, but a waste of your talents as well if you're working on these projects that could see the light of day, but instead are just sitting on your hard drive. So what I have today is this magical little project here. Having just said all of that, like this is one of about 1 billion projects on my drive, on my project drive, that I should probably get around to finishing. I'm using this project as a kind of mold, a lump of clay to sort of mold into something more special, because the project basically came about as a way of testing out the Sonic Academy stuff, actually. So a lot of the synths in this are created with Sonic Academy Anna. The kick drum in this is with the lovely Sonic Academy kick, which I've been using a hell of a lot lately. I've got a Psytrance kick, which is ironic considering I'm a progressive house producer. Basically, this is just me throwing a whole bunch of stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. There's a whole bunch of cheesy stuff in there that doesn't work. There's actually a number of holes in this project, and there's also a number of ways in which the arrangement and the way things that fit together don't actually work. And so that was the main reason that I decided to use this project, because it's I think there's a lot of potential for it to be something cool. I'll give you a quick play of it now. It's called Hexagon, and it sounds like the kind of track that I think a lot of my fans would catch themselves rocking out to on the dance floor at one of my gigs. So here we go. So that section there basically just keeps rising like a cake in the oven. I have this kind of chord riff thing going on in the middle here. I'm kind of already hitting the limit of how much melodic stuff you can have going on without totally overwhelming the listener. Over here, there's a kind of a drop section that brings it all back together. And then here the chord progression comes back in. A few little melodic elements like that sort of help bring it all together, but still it's very sparse. There are a few things, like I said, that are muted out because they don't really work that well. For example, this cheesy synth lead I have going on here. A little bit too my first VST trance song, so it probably needs to be replaced with something else. But I like the idea of having like a lead in there in the first place. So that's basically the project. I also have here the rough mix exactly as it is now, that I can switch to at any time to listen to what I began working with. I recommend all producers have this in their mix. In Ableton especially, it's really good. What you basically do is you bounce it out. I do it with the mastering on. The small amount of mastering amplification that I have switched on at the moment. So there's a keyboard shortcut to solo that, and there's also a keyboard shortcut to turn off the mastering. And that's really important because otherwise it's going to come blasting through with the mastering applied twice and you'll have no eardrums left. So yeah, my master chisel here is pretty simple at the moment. It's just some basic Ableton multiband dynamics and glue compression, etc. A little Voxengo span there on the end to sort of see what all the blobs of audio are doing in the frequency spectrum. The only other thing I would say about this project for now is that a whole bunch of stuff is run through a duck bus, and that's basically just like to sidechain some stuff. And we can tweak those settings as we go along. So the first thing that I want to teach everybody in this series of producer challenges that I'm throwing at you to help strengthen certain skills that might need strengthening or things that you hadn't considered is basically a single pass of just making everything cooler in some way. So at the moment, there is hardly any processing on anything. I tend to try and at least put the meat and potatoes of a track together without any EQ, anything like that. So you can see there's just basically hardly anything. Some stuff on that riser, that's about it. And so what I'm going to do today is basically audition every single part of the tune and find some way to just make it better, whether it be fixing some kind of problem that it has, or perhaps tweaking its arrangement or its pattern a little bit, and probably applying some kind of rock and roll processing to make it really fun. And so the reason that I do this is to sort of make sure that I've checked every single place in the track where things could be cooler and really made sure that I've tried some different treatment options to do that. So what I'm going to do is go through and do a quick pass now. Then I'll come back and basically show you a sort of contrast it with the original rough mix that we have here, and I'll show you some of the things that I would generally do to some of these tracks. So I'll see you in a second. Okay, so we're back. I've done a quick pass going through all the different tracks and applying various different kinds of processing to everything to basically give everything a little bit more character, a little bit better tone, a little bit better placement in the mix as well. I did pretty much everything except the riser because I got lazy and that already had a bunch of stuff on it, so whatever. So basically, I'll give you a little before and after. Once again, if you just keep an eye on this little solo here, that's when the original rough mix is soloed, and then I can play the before and after. So I'll start with this section here. This is how it was before. And after. Breakdown chords, I've basically taken this original chord riff and I've made it more of a background kind of, basically a more like ethereal, echoey, washed out thing, and I've added a few layers here. That are just basically a little bit more exciting. So I'll give you a sort of preview of how that sounds now. And bringing it all together again at the end here. Okay, so quite a transformation. There's still a lot of stuff that is unruly and still needs to be tamed. There's definitely a few more things to be solved, but this is just one pass. This is just one run through to give everything a big kick up the backside, and I think it's a big step in the right direction. So I'm just going to run you through some kind of examples of the processing that I've done here. So this is a really simple one. Basically just a little bit of a flanger. I think I started with an Ableton flanger preset, just put a little treble in there. Just a bit crispier and fills up the stereo field a little more. Pretty simple. This snare I think is definitely going to need some accompaniment by a cleaner and perhaps snappier sounding snare drum at some point. But that said, I've put a big compressor on it, but a mid side to just bring out a few different elements, and a little low pass there because it was a little bit like crispy in the top end. Sub is basic saturator. Use the hot tubes preset, which is always fun. A little bit of tweaking never hurts. Basic compressor. That's a pretty standard compressor setting for me. High-ish attack, 5-ish ratio for a baseline. Brought up the 200 hertz a little bit just to help that sort of shine through on smaller systems. This is where things start to get a little bit more interesting. The digibass were all these little bass stabs and wubs and things were sounding a little bit dry in the original version. So I really just wanted to give them a bit of a sense of space. And so the first thing I would do with something like this, there's firstly just a little bit of a Haas effect going on there, which is basically where you have, in this case, a ping pong delay, pushing the original signal out to both sides, all playing very quickly with each other. If I had more feedback on that, you'd hear that effect really pronounced. So it'd be like this. So it just adds a little bit of stereo craziness to the whole thing, bit of EQ just for good measure, and a big washed out reverb. Similar kind of fare with these bass stabs. I went crazy with the saturator because it's fun to do that sometimes. Just, you know, see how angry you can make the sound. Simple delay here is same thing, just that kind of for the spatial stereo effect. There's a huge side chain on here, which is separate from the actual duck bus because it's so side chainy. Little bit of that sub bass out of there because it was going crazy. And this is the free dimension expander from Exfer Records, which is really cool. And it's basically similar to the dimension expander setting in Native Instruments Massive. For the wub, I went totally crazy and actually stole a bunch of processing that I'd done before with, say, these kind of stereo effects. Put a big reverb on it, saturated the reverb, epic sidechain again, just to make it really, really huge. So this was the original version, and the new one. As mentioned, the chord riff, just filter delay, reverbs, just basic stuff to make it feel a bit washed out. I saturated that as well, just to help it sort of stick out a bit. Went a little bit crazy with that there. So these are all pretty simple right now, and that's because I'm going to come through and do another pass later on and make these more dynamic and interesting. For this pass, their purpose is basically just to come into the mix and fatten things up. So it's all basically the same pattern being played by different synths. Hi pad is this is something I do a lot with pads nowadays. Is I just try to give them a bit of movement. If you listen sort of in the background of the original version here. If you listen carefully, you can hear that pad just playing a single held chord in the background. What I've done here is I've changed that in a number of ways so that there is some movement and so that the pad feels more alive. And the way that I do that is with volume automation. It's basically just a way of making things sort of shine through at certain moments and gives it basically almost like an ARP kind of rhythm to something that was otherwise static. So that's pretty much the purpose of this too, is to do the same kind of thing with left and right. This is from the Dreaming library in Omnisphere, which is full of sounds that are really cool, like spiritual and ethereal, and this is basically just some spatial effects again. We'll be coming back to do much more of that kind of stuff in future. So what we have overall is basically just a way of visiting and paying direct attention to every single little thing that's going on in your project. And I think it's a really valuable thing to do. And for your final version, you should be doing this probably dozens of times. You should be spending hours focusing on this processing and asking yourself if you've really sort of explored every avenue. So this is just one step in the right direction, and by doing that, you now have a sort of you've bolstered this mix, this project at this point in time to like a higher level than what it was before, and so that you can use as a platform for the next iteration of the project. And so what we're going to do next in the next video is basically a very similar thing to what we did in this one, except instead of going vertically, we're actually going to be going from left to right and looking at each segment of time and finding ways that we can do cool stuff. So yeah, that's basically it for this one. I hope you've enjoyed this chapter, and we'll be back with chapter 2 real soon.